This is God's Acre Cemetery, where Bethany founder Alexander Campbell and many of his family are buried. Ghost hunters say there's ectoplasm all over it. Screaming, whining, and ghostly screams have been heard within its walls. There's no gate here. The cemetery is surrounded by a 4-foot wall that they say keep the spirits from getting out. One of the most famous ghost stories about it concerns a student who spent the night here. All that happened was that he got cold and wet. He went back to his dorm and fell asleep with his clothes and gloves on. His roommates heard him screaming and flailing his arms around. He was having a nightmare. He was trapped in the mausoleum, pounding on the door, trying to get out. When he threw off his gloves, his fists were bruised and his fingernails were torn and bleeding. He threw his glove to the floor and something popped out. When he picked it up, he found it was a human finger.
Another story is about a student having a nightmare. He was trapped in the mausoleum with Alexander Campbell's ghost firing a pistol at him. When they returned to the cemetery for the first time afterward, they found there was a bullet hole where his heart would have been had the shot been fired. And this is the mausoleum where the bullet was fired. They say the cemetery is a beautiful place to visit, if you dare.
Phillips Hall is home of probably one of Bethany's most famous ghost stories, that of Sarah. She was said to be depressed after her roommates spent more time with their boyfriends than with her. One day, the resident advisor saw smoke from Sarah's room and put out a fire there, but noticed a trail of blood. She followed it to the attic where she found Sarah had hanged herself. Today, students report hearing what sounds like a chair tipping over in the attic, or report seeing a noose or droplets of blood under the attic door.
This is the Johnson Art Center, which was originally a gymnasium. An arsonist burned it to the ground in 1915. Later, it was the scene of riots and student demonstrations. In the 1980s, it was rededicated in honor of Grace Phillips Johnson. Students say Miss Johnson's ghost haunts the building and point to the eyes in her portrait, which follow you as you move around the room. Now, that's weird.
Cochran Hall is another dorm said to be haunted. It was built on the site of an old ranch in spring. A typhoid fever broke out here, some say because the spring was contaminated when the ranch was torn down. The ghost who lives here is said to be friendly and hangs around the first floor apartment. One resident said he hasn't seen a ghost, but says his microwave turns itself on and off. Maybe the ghost is hungry.
The legend goes that a Japanese student attended school here. He was an accomplished diver. His English wasn't good, so he flunked out. In Japan, that's a humiliation. So, it's said he climbed to the top of Old Main and dived to his death off the clock tower. Students at Moreland Hall, which was a dorm back then in the 80s, say one midnight their eyes were drawn to the tower, where they saw a ghostly figure take a dive right toward their windows. It's said you still may see him if you look at the tower just at the time of his death.
We hope you've enjoyed these ghost stories. Keep watching this YouTube channel for more from campus.